Today, I'm going to show you exactly how I transformed a classic horizontal video clip into a polished, high-performing vertical feed post. We are going to explore why relying solely on flashy, single-purpose generative AI tools might actually be the wrong long-term strategy for serious content creators. Think of this session as a little workflow experiment. We will test what a generative powerhouse like Runway can do, and then compare it to the robust end-to-end creator pipeline that Vizard offers. My goal is to help you scale your repurposing strategy without the stress or the hair-pulling that usually comes with manual editing. So, let us set the stage. I started with a short clip shot in traditional horizontal landscape orientation. The obvious problem is that when you simply crop horizontal footage to vertical, you lose all the important details on the edges, or the composition just looks totally off. Runway offers a really cool feature called Expand Video, which literally uses generative AI to fill in those empty vertical spaces on the sides. I uploaded my original file, selected the expand option, and let the artificial intelligence do its thing. My first impression was that it is surprisingly fast, especially using their turbo mode for quick rendering. However, it is also a little bit quirky because the AI has to invent entirely new pixels out of thin air. In my specific test, the AI created an extra car-looking artifact that sat quite awkwardly on top of the actual vehicle in the shot. That was definitely annoying for that one specific segment. But a lot of the other generated fills look surprisingly creative and stylized. It almost had a video game-like quality, which could actually be really cool if that specific vibe fits your brand. A very practical thing you need to know is that Runway only processed the first 10 seconds of my clip in a single pass. Since my clip was 21 seconds long, I had to run the entire process again to cover the rest of the footage. That is totally fine for a quick test, but if you have dozens of clips or much longer footage, the costs and time really start to pile up. You also have to watch out for inconsistent textures or objects between batches, which means you might need to do manual cleanup afterward. I am not knocking Runway at all, as it is a fantastic tool for creative fills and experimental aesthetics. However, for creators whose job is to turn long-form content into high-volume, regular vertical clips, there are clearly some missing gaps in the workflow. Generative fill is great for expanding frames, but it does not solve the end-to-end problem of finding the best moments or trimming for punch. You still need to handle things like adding captions, writing hooks, and scheduling dozens of clips across social platforms. That is exactly where a companion tool like Vizard becomes an incredibly useful asset for your production line. Let me walk you through how I would build a steady pipeline for vertical content without doing all that manual, repetitive work. Step 1 is simply uploading your long horizontal master file directly into the Vizard dashboard. Vizard's AI immediately auto-edits the video to identify viral-ready snippets, like punchlines or high-energy moments that really grab attention. Instead of manually scrubbing through an entire timeline looking for the best bits, the AI instantly provides a stack of perfect candidate clips. Step 2 is reformatting, where Vizard automatically crops the horizontal video for a vertical mobile layout. Unlike generative fill, which invents brand new image areas, Vizard intelligently reframes to keep the main subject in the center of the action. This approach avoids those weird AI artifacts and ensures your clips look intentional and high quality. If you still want that creative look, you can easily pair these clips with background effects, motion blur, or stretched backgrounds. Step 3 is polish, which is where you add those essential captions and on-screen text to keep viewers hooked. Vizard's captioning is lightning fast and accurate. Plus, you can fully customize the styles to perfectly match your brand's personality. Never underestimate how much captions improve watch rates on mobile feeds. It is a total game changer for engagement. Step 4 is scale, which is where Vizard really shines for creators who need a consistent posting cadence. You can set your desired frequency, and the auto-schedule feature will automatically queue and post content exactly when you want. The content calendar lets you see everything in one place, so you can easily manage what is posted and where. Comparing this to doing everything manually or using just one generative tool, this workflow is significantly faster and more repeatable. Runway gave me a creative way to expand frames for artistic edits, which is definitely awesome for specific one-off projects. But when your goal is to extract dozens of professional shorts, keep the tone consistent, and hit your posting schedule, Vizard is built for that volume. Let's break down the pros and cons so you can decide what fits your specific needs. Runway is great for creative expansion when you need to invent new background pixels for stylistic elements. However, it can be costly and inconsistent if you have to process a high volume of footage, and artifacts are always a risk. On the other hand, Vizard is built for the creator grind, focusing on finding viral clips, cropping for mobile, and scheduling posts automatically. It is not trying to be a pixel inventor like Runway, but it is laser-focused on making your existing content perform better. The best strategy is to pair them together. Use Runway for those hero shots and Vizard for your bulk repurposing needs. If you want that creative look without the weird artifacts, run your generative fill only on frames where it truly adds value. Then use Vizard to handle the heavy lifting of chopping, captioning, and scheduling everything else. Ultimately, I was happy with the final output and felt it was totally ready for a social media feed. Some frames did look a little bit synthetic, but others had a cool texture that actually worked well with my brand vibe. For the bits I did not like, I simply regenerated them or leaned into the stylized look for a unique edit. That is the right mindset. Treat these generative tools as creative collaborators, not magic cleaners that fix everything. If you are trying this at home, start with one long video and let Vizard auto-cut it into a batch of vertical clips. Edit a handful of those clips so they look perfect, and schedule them out to cover your feed for the next week. Then, as a second step, selectively bring in Runway for any specific shots that need extra background extension. This way, you keep your content consistent, avoid paying for unnecessary render costs, and still get the creative benefits you need. Alright, if you liked this walkthrough and want more of these practical hybrid workflows, make sure you drop a comment and subscribe. I will keep experimenting and sharing what actually works for scaling content, so I will see you in the next one. Ciao!